Hi guys, welcome to the roster review. Today I'll be talking through the triple Catan list I've taken to the Hellstorm and had a pretty decent run with. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and clicking the notification bell in the corner so you can see every time we release one of these videos. And if you would like to see more exclusive content and tournament reviews, consider joining the Elite. It helps us a lot and gives you a lot more content. Okay, so my list. I went into the Hellstorm Rip and Tear recently, this weekend, and I had a pretty good run with my triple Catan list. I went undefeated day one and then hit two basically almost unbeatable matchups, and then I ran into money. So the score isn't great, but every list that's not considered, the top of the meta, I think this list gives a good run into. And considering it's Necrons, they struggle anyway. And I think that kind of skill list allows you to pick off wins from people that are inexperienced against them. And they're incredibly fun to play. So getting into what's in the list. So what's in the list? The list consists of 3 detachments, because I need to have 3 Catans and only one Catan is allowed per detachment. I run them all as Relentlessly Expansionist and Eternal Conquerors for pre-game 6-inch move and OPSEC on all my models, other than Catans obviously, because they don't benefit from this. I run it with 2 Chronomancers as my HQs, because they are the cheapest, most mobile characters I can get, because they move 8 inches and fly. So I've got a Vanguard detachment, which is run by my Chronomancer, who's my Warlord. He's got an Entropic Lance because I had spare 10 points, and D3 plus 3 damage shot is nice. I gave him a Veil of Darkness because there isn't really any other options that work. So he can gain some ability, teleport around the board, and maybe surprise someone, get me some points on the mission. And then I've got Enduring Will on him, because he's only got 4 wounds and 4 up invuln. So whenever he gets hit by a 2 damage attack, that hurts him a lot. But that 1 damage reduction can save him, because I don't have many screening units, so he will be around the board alone a lot of times. And I'd like to keep him alive, because he can score me either engage on the front if I need to, or something else, so he needs to be in the list for that. Then I've got 2 units of 2 Crypto Thralls, and 2 units of 5 Flayed Ones. They're just there to play the mission again. And this is the first detachment with my first Catan, which is the Void Dragon. He is the most versatile one, so I've given him Transdimensional Thunderbolt, which is the targeted Catan power that does D3 mortal wounds. And he's got his own Catan power, which is Voltaic Storm, which does the same thing effectively, but it's within 18-inch range. Then I've got the second detachment, which is the Outrider detachment. It's also run by Chronomancer, but he's got no upgrades. I didn't have any points, and I already ran it 4 CPs, so I couldn't really give him anything else. The same detachment, it's an Outrider. So I've got 3 units of Free Wraiths, which are core to my army, and 3 units of Free Ophidian Destroyers. They are infantry, and that's key, because they allow me to, raise the banners or Rod, just play the mission. And then the most important Catan, it's a Nightbringer. He's the beat stick, he kills everything he sees, so I've given him Antimatter Meteor on top of his already powerful Gaze of Death. Then the third detachment, and final one, is just a Transcendent Catan in a auxiliary support detachment, because I don't really have points for any more units, and I don't have any troops to make the patrol detachment or something free, and I cannot afford another HQ, so you're just going to auxiliary detachment for 2 CPs. That leaves me on 4 CPs and 3 Catans. So how this list works. It might seem straightforward, but it is pretty deceptive. The list obviously relies on 3 Catans taking a bunch of damage, moving forward and killing enemy elite units. But that's the trick. People focus on the Catans, and they are very tough to kill unless you hit something that can one-shot a Catan, which is problematic, and you cannot really get around it. You have a really good time, because turn 1, you move them out, you hide them behind the terrain, so they are untouchable turn 1, and they're already mid-board, and they move 8 inches and fly. So they are in a threat range of almost any units trying to play the mission in the mid-board, because effectively you have to come out of your deployment if you want to score any primaries, and that's where the Catans wait in the middle to just come out and hit you. And the problem is, most armies can deal about 6 damage a turn into them, because they take 3 wounds per phase. So you can either shoot them, You can fight them in combat, you can do damage in the psychic phase, or you can overwatch, but there's units in the army to take the overwatch for the Catans. So effectively, your opponent will have to be fighting them for at least 2 turns. And that's because, that's assuming there's 1 Catan, but there's 3 Catans, and not everyone can take wounds of all of them. And if you don't, they become very problematic, because even if they die one by one, they are there, soaking up all the attention. And the little obsec units, my Wraiths that move super fast, they move 6 inches before the game. So if you deploy, you always deploy them on the line near the terrain. And if you go first, you move 6 inches forward and then 12 inches even more forward. And if you go second, you just move back behind the terrain and they're safe. So the idea is the core of my army is the Catans, but the units that actually win me the game are the obsec units. The Wraiths are incredible because of their speed, their pressure, and their toughness. They are toughness 5 with a 4-up invulnerable save and 3-up armor save, 3 wounds each, and they've got living metal, so they heal every turn. And every game I've played, I noticed there's like 1 or 2 Wraiths left in my opponent's deployment, obsec sitting on the objective. So unless your opponent has loads of obsec or has to, they have to send the units back because they cannot always kill them. It directs the firepower from the Catans that are still advancing up the board, because even if you slowly lose your obsec units, you should accrue enough of an advantage early game that you'll be sitting on 40 to 45 primaries, and when you lose all of them, you still have 3 Catans flying around, removing your opponent from the objectives. So the idea is you don't really smash your opponent's 100 to 10. You go for like 80 to 60 wins, 90 to 70 wins, something like that. You just get ahead of your opponent, but you don't really smash them. It's a very tactical game where you have to really protect your Catans to make sure that they cannot really be killed quickly, or they're not worth killing, because that's when they shine. They also have the ability, the Wraiths and the Ophidian Destroyers, all my quicker units, they have the ability to move very quickly if you go first. So imagine they move 18 or 16 inches forward, and your opponent usually deploys about 24 inches away from you. So you'll be getting 9-inch, 10-inch charges, and these charges can be crucial because if your opponent mispositions, you can charge a frontal screening unit, because Wraiths have the phasing ability, so they can phase through terrain. So they ignore terrain. It's not fly. They don't fly. They get slowed by the forest, but they can go through walls when they charge. So what you do is you move forward, you charge an enemy unit in the front, and then you hope for a high charge roll. You charge in, you pile in 3 inches, and then you consolidate 3 inches. So that gives you a lot of movement to get on your opponent's objective. So you can either stop him from raising a banner, you can stop him from scoring it, or you can wrap a vehicle, because even if vehicles fly now, they cannot fall back and shoot, or it costs them CPs. So you start grinding down your opponent very slowly, and they still have to commit firepower to the unit that's wrapping them, that's tagging them. And it's really tough to deal with because, you've got 3 Catans running at you, you've got more Wraiths coming at you, you've got Ophidian Destroyers moving from piece of terrain to piece of terrain, and, that makes you take decisions. And when you have to make a decision early game and you're under pressure in the tournament, you'll make mistakes. And, that list abuses mistakes because it's not itself top of the meta. It's very tricky and it's very skewed. So you have to know exactly what you want to force your opponent into. So, for example, you push your Catans, advance them forward, keep them in the middle of the board, and go, okay, you have to kill my Catans now, or next turn I'll be charging you. So they go, oh man, I have to kill the Catans, and they commit too much firepower into the Catans, bounce off because you've got 4-up invul and toughness 7, and then they don't deal with the Wraiths that are in their deployment, wreaking havoc and taking the primaries. So that's what you kind of have to try. The rest of my units in my army, so my Ophidian Destroyers, they've got decent damage output. One of them with Hyperphase Blaze, I think they're called, has -4 free damage, and the other guys are -3 2 damage, but they're only strength 6 and 4 respectively. So they're not that scary, but they do have a lot of damage if they get in. They're not really designed to get in because they're only toughness 4 with 4-up save. It's a bit underwhelming. So you have to hide them, move them around, but they have an infantry keyword. So for your secondaries, you almost always take Rod because that's one of the easier ones for this army. So, they will move around with pregame move. They can deep strike for free. They can burrow back in and then come back later for 1 CP. So they'll be doing Rod in all the quarters while your opponent is busy with something else. And you have to pull your opponents out of the quarters so they allow you to Rod with flayed ones that are literally in the list just to deep strike because they have small bases and they can run in the corners. So, you put all that pressure down the middle and you have to accept the risk of getting shot. And it's even more difficult sometimes because one of the better secondaries for this list is To the Last, because that even further baits your opponent into going for assassinating, trying to kill the Catans. And if they do, think about it, you've got 15 points if your Catans live, and your opponent loses 9 VPs for not killing them. So you can then change your game plan and keep your Catans behind the terrain and only use them as a counter pieces. Because if your opponent needs 2 turns to kill a Catan, if you come out turn 4, turn 3, it's almost a given that your opponent won't have enough time to kill them, because you keep them together and you go and destroy the threats. You don't go and harass, you go and destroy the threats. So they get less and less while you still have 3 Catans, and they just cannot deal with them. Even if they kill 1, that's 3 points for them and 5 point loss for you, but you still get 10 on the other primary. And your opponent probably is focusing on killing your Catans and not doing other things because they need to commit a lot into you. Another thing this army does very well is Purge the Vermin, because if you go To the Last and Purge the Vermin, you keep your Catans back, hidden behind obscuring terrain, and as the opponent comes in to stop your Purge the Vermin, Catans can jump out and kill something. And if they send something that's not enough of a threat for the Catans to come out, Wraiths are fast enough to come out, charge, and kill that little unit, or Ophidian Destroyers, or even Cryptoflows, because next to the Chronomancer, they have 6 attacks each, weapon skill 3, strength 5 -1 damage, so they're really good, and they have 2 shots each from their eyes. It's basically like a Ghost Reaper. It's strength 5 -2 1 damage, so they're very good. 40-point unit, they're amazing. Always use them. They're incredible. So basically, that's what this army is trying to do. If you don't have a very good mission secondary, which quite often happens, you have to go for To the Last, and you have to really be careful with your Catans. But people get really greedy trying to kill them. So just hide them behind the terrain, put them in an advantageous position where they cannot get charged and damaged for free, and make sure you get the first hit on them. And that's key for this list to function. I feel like this video really needs section for the Catans separately, so that's what I'm doing. That's roughly how my army works. Move forward, play the mission, throw the Catans to do stuff. But how you use the Catans is the main thing, because Catans have a few tricks up their sleeve. They all have 2 powers. The Void Dragon has his 2 powers, so does Nightbringer, and so does the Transcendent Catan. And Transcendent Catan can only cast 1 power, but he knows 2. So I always give him Time's Arrow and Sky of Falling Stars, because these are 2 very different powers. They have different purposes. So Time's Arrow is very interesting and underrated, I feel, because you select the unit within 18 inches, and you can select the character unit. The lookout set doesn't apply on anything. It just has to be visible and within 18. Then you roll a d6, and if you match or roll more than the rule characteristic, they are dead. They're just removed from play. No feel, no pain, nothing. They're just dead. So if you play a super elite army, Thousand Suns, for example, is a terrible matchup, but you can remove the Terminators. So you select the unit and you roll on a 3+, Terminator is just dead. So, it's not that much because you killed 1 Terminator. But if you think about it, for 1 CP, you can swap out one of your Catan powers, and you can duplicate them across the Catans. So 1 Catan cannot have 2 of the same power, but 2 different Catans can have the same power, as long as they're not the Catan-specific powers. So, for example, if I go into an extremely elite army of my opponent, and if they don't have vehicles, I'll obviously swap out Voltaic Storm, and if they have vehicles, I'll swap out the Transdimensional Thunderbolt, because 2 Catans doing Time's Arrow, on 3+, they kill a Terminator. So if I wanted to do Transdimensional Thunderbolt, I'll have to roll 2+ for the power to go off, and then 5+ on a d3 to kill 1. But if I take a Time's Arrow, I can go, okay, 3+, Terminator dead. Then Transcendent Catan, 3+, Terminator dead. And then starting turn 2, that's what I do turn 1, 2 Catans have Time's Arrow. Turn 2, I can give that to my Nightbringer. And then I have 3 Time's Arrows. So from 1 Time's Arrow, that's not really doing much, just killing a model. You get to 3, when on 3+, you just remove a Terminator. Then you have all the other Catan powers, so I'll do Voltaic Storm on my Transcendent Catan. On my Void Dragon. And on 2+, I roll d3 and maybe I kill another one. Then I do either Gaze of Death or Antimatter Meteor, depending if I need range. on my Nightbringer, and he can kill more of them. So I can kill half the unit before I even charge them, and then Catan can shoot them with a spear. But to be honest, I've been super unlucky and he hasn't done anything. But you've got the potential. You can half kill a 10-man Karabuku Terminator unit that are super tough with 4-up invuln. And, you fly around and you do that. If you hit Firstborn Space Marines, most of the characters have 4 or 5 wounds. So you can just pick out the Chaplain, a Sanguinary Priest, or an Apothecary and go 4+, 5+, they're dead. If you play into Death Guard especially, because all their characters, all the Tallyman and all the little buffing guys, they'll have only 4 wounds. So no matter how tough they are, you just fly over 18 inches and go, okay, 4+, he's dead. And that's huge pressure on the opponent. And if that's not going this way, if you hit the Horde, ×0 becomes useless effectively. So you go, okay, then my Transcendent Catan will be using his Sky of Falling Stars. So he picks 3 units within 24 inches without line of sight. And all I have to roll is a d6, and I have to roll down number of models in the unit. And if I do, 6 always fails. If I do, they take d3 mortal wounds. And again, that's not that much. You just get d3 mortal wounds here and there, and that's a Horde. But if you swap out your powers, by the time turn 2 hits, you will be going, okay, 3 units take d3 mortal wounds. And again, 3 units take d3 mortal wounds. And then again, 3 units take d3 mortal wounds. And you'll be killing each Catan will be killing 5 models a turn. So 3 Catans, that's 15 models. And you start blinking them here and there. They start taking morale. There's less and less units. Then when your Wraiths hit, they do some damage. When your Nightbringer hits and starts swiping, you do 12 attacks and you start removing the Hordes. So you have play into those armies because you can keep your Catans safe, taking to the last, hiding them behind walls, and just doing. 24 inches is a huge range on the smaller tables. So you just go, okay, I'm gonna be picking off at the units until they come to me, already savaged, half the size, and then you can fight them, and you don't feel as pressured to come out into something with your Catans because they have the ability to do stuff. Swapping out the Catan powers is huge. And then you only start with 4 CPs in this army, so in your turn you have 5. But that's what the CPs are for, to swap out the powers to adapt to your opponent. And if you need to, if you're desperate for damage, you cast 1 extra Catan power. That's not a stratagem and only 1 CP. You roll a d6 and you cast the power that you rolled on. So if you get lucky against an elite army, you get a ×0 or Antimatter Meteor, and you do great. If you play a Horde, most other powers are really good into them. And even if that power is wasted, that CP is literally designed, it's in the list to let you do the additional power and swap it out. Because your Chronomancer can give a buff on any of the Dynasty units for reroll charges, so that's not that bad. And maybe here and there you CP reroll charge on the Catan. But other than that, it's all there for the powers. So that's how this list works. Now, how to tackle it. Usually how it works is longer than tackle it, but with the current state of the meta, it's probably easier to talk about how to tackle this list, because there's loads of ways to do it, and your objective as the player of this list is to avoid these and try to bait your opponent to something else. But not very happily, I will tell you what's the best way to beat this list, because I've run into a few opponents and money, because I was unlucky to do so. If your opponent knows what to do, it's very tough. So think about it. This list has 3 Catans, which are basically 1,000 points of my list, and everything else is the mission playing units. So you have to either be able to one-shot a Catan, which removes the threat, because if you can be active in 3 phases, so if you're sisters, you can deep strike with Seraphims and shoot in the movement phase, that's movement phase 3 wounds. Then you can shoot in the shooting phase, that's shooting phase 3 wounds. And then you can charge and do damage in the combat phase, that's another 3 wounds, and that's Catan dead, because they only have 9 wounds and take 3 per phase. So that's very scary. And it forces the Necron player into screening the 12 inches out for that, for that deep strike and shot. And, it really limits your options with how little units you have in this game anyway to play the mission. There's armies like Thousand Suns, Grey Knights who have targeted psychic powers that are very easy to take 3 wounds off. Then they get shot for another 3 wounds and charge for another 3 wounds. And even if they only drop 24 inches away and shoot and psychic power your wounds away, you are only on 4 next turn, so you're even easier to kill, to be shot and charged, because in one of the phases you're gonna lose 3, go down to 1, and they're gonna get charged and you just get 1 wound through. So you will force your opponent to screen their Catans out and play very conservatively while you're winning the mission. So if you can one-shot the Catan, that should be simple enough. Just focus on removing the units playing the mission and keeping the Catans back. And if Catans come out, just kill them because it's easy for you to do so. Another way to win against them, if you don't have the ability to kill them, is the mobility. Because remember, Catans only move 8 inches. They cannot advance and do Catan powers. They cannot advance and charge. So they are stuck to moving 8, and they have fly, so they cannot charge through walls. They have to go around them, or on top, obviously. But it limits their mobility because most of the tournament terrain forces them to charge all the way around. So they will be able to get a charge of turn 3. But by the time turn 3 hits, your quick army can scatter around. So if you have 6 objective mission, I have 3 Catans. So one of the Catans is going to go left, one of the Catans is going to go right, and one of the Catans can't really go down the middle because there's nothing for him to do. He has to join one of the sides. So you just skitter around, and Catans only have 6 attacks really. And you can avoid the Catan powers by hiding, or antimatter meteor is the closest unit. And even if they can target you, they'll do like D3 mortal wounds, D3 mortal wounds, and that's about it. So that becomes very difficult to deal with. Another thing that really hurts me, I noticed, and I didn't think it's going to be the case, is artillery. Because if you target my cryptoflows in the back, they are key for me to keep my chronomancers alive. And the chronomancers move forward a little bit. They give some invuns to my Filion destroyers because they need them. They sit on the objective when cryptoflows are behind the walls. And cryptoflows are toughness 5 and 3 up safe, but they're only 2 wounds. So if they get shot by something decent, they'll die, and I have no units in the back. And my cryptoflows do the rot for me in my quarters. So if you get rid of them, I'm really struggling. I have to keep Catans back on the objectives or Wraiths, and I don't want to be doing that. So whenever you don't have a chance to kill all the Catans, just kill the OBSEC units, because 3 Catans cannot do anything on the board. They fly 8 inches, and they go from objective to objective, but they are not OBSEC. So one of your OBSEC guardsmen, one of your OBSEC guardians, anything, will take an objective from the Catan, and there's nothing you can do about it. I can heroic intervene, but smart placement can prevent that. So if you just go for all the units around the Catans, they will lose a lot of playability, and they won't be able to catch up on points most of the time. Even if they table you, you'll probably be ahead on points. Very, very easy, simple trick, since I am almost forced to taking Rod in most of my missions. If you just screen the corners of the board and not allow me to deep strike and Rod with my flayed ones, I don't really have good ways of taking these screening units out of the board because I don't have any shooting, and my Catan powers are 24 inches. So if I move far enough to target your unit and do D3 mortal wounds, you will easily be able to, smite me, shoot me, charge me, and kill my Catan, or bog him down with the volume of bodies, and they'll be deemed useless. So you're effectively forcing me into taking Rod for 4 points, maybe 8 if I really push for it, but you can always deny me 12 if you really want to, and you really have to remember about it. Something that hurts me a lot, especially Thousand Suns, is switching of OBSEC. Not OBSEC, sorry, invulnerable saves. If you take away invulnerable from Wraiths, they just disappear. If you take invulnerable away from the Catans, they have no protection because they have 4 up or 3 up save on the Void Dragon. So if you have psychic powers or any ability to switch off invulnerable saves or turning them into 5 with Dark Angel Reliquary, you remove almost all their toughness, and they'll surely die very quickly. And you can also screen the Catans very well because Antimatter Meteor is the closest unit, and this one of my highest damage output powers. I know it only goes off on 3+, but if you happen to roll a 6, it's D3 plus 3, so that's huge for me. And on top of that, my Catans move 8, and they can, they have. Well, Nightbringer has a small base, but the Void Dragon has a big base, and so does the Transcendent Catan. So if I move 8, you can position your chaff units so the charge is very long for me to get to you, or you can move block me so I cannot clear your unit. So you keep my Catans back, allowing me to only charge what you want me to charge. So I'll be bogged down with only 5 or 6 attacks. Then Void Dragon has D6 tail attacks. Nightbringer can swipe for 12 attacks. But it's not that reliable, because if you have a 20-man unit or 10-man unit, the Catan might struggle to get through. And even if he doesn't struggle, it's a turn of the Catan not doing anything. And they are 350, 370 points each. So, when they're killing your chaff unit that just blocks me, I am really annoyed because I'm not getting to your juicy stuff that will win you the game. So that's about how you tackle it. It's not. It's depending on the matchup really. If you can kill the Catans or you can play around the Catans, but effectively you can almost make them irrelevant if you know exactly how I play the game. So that's how you tackle this list. Let's see how we could improve it. Okay, so how to improve the list? This list is super fun, and I want to keep it in the theme of a triple Catan. There is a potential of a double Catan, and you can fit way more, like dropping the Transcendent, because Void Dragon and Nightbringer are obviously better. But I like to keep the theme. And to keep the theme, I think the best way to do it is maxing out your MSU while also giving yourself a bit more options. So in my next tournament iteration of this list, which I'm hoping to take into Hellstorm in November, will be dropping the Ophidian Destroyers because, to be fair, they haven't really worked. I had them there because they're infantry and I wanted to give them a chance and they look amazing, so I was hoping they will work. But with toughness 4 and no inbuilt invulnerability, with only +1 to hit in combat, they just don't cut it. They're nowhere near as reliable as Wraiths. They're big models, so you cannot hide behind containers and stuff. So I think I have to drop them. So effectively what the list is going to look like is I'm going to drop Ophidian Destroyers, 1 unit of Flayed Ones, because I noticed the second unit of Flayed Ones was always screened out and they never found a good place to drop. And once they dropped, they're decent, but they're not that killy, so I'd rather get something else that's faster and plays me the mission. So the list is going to be very similar. It's going to be 3 detachments, Vanguard, Outrider, and Auxiliary detachment, as it is. It's still relentlessly expansionist and Eternal Conquerors, because I think that's the best build for that list. I'll have 9 Wraiths, so 3, 3, and 3. I'll also have my Warlord will change into a Locust Lord. So it's the old Lord on the Destroy Lord. I'll be giving him Enduring Will for -1 damage. I'll be giving him Staff of Light, so he gets extra shots with ghost explosions. Because he's a destroyer, he gets reroll once to hit, and his own aura for the destroyer units is rerolling 1 to wound. So rerolling once to hit and wound with exploding 6s into 2 shots. It'll give me some options to remove little units. And I'll also buy him a 5-point upgrade, which is called Phylactery, I think. And the way it works is he's already got 6 wounds, toughness 5 and 4 up invul, and living metal. So Phylactery allows him to heal D3 instead of 1 on the living metal. And also, since he's a noble, I'll be able to get command protocols, because my army doesn't get them because I only run 2 chronomancers in the previous iteration. Then I'll run 1 chronomancer because 2 of my detachments need an HQ. And he's just there because he gives 0 charges and 5 up invul to my units, so I can even buff up Scarabs or anything I need to. And he moves 8 and flies and can be bodyguarded by the Cryptofrost, so he's very useful. And he's only 80 points. Then I'm gonna be upgrading my Cryptofrost to 3 units of 2, because they're super tough, they're super good, and they can screen out, they can kill a deep striking units with 2 guys with 12 attacks sitting on 3. This is incredible. And they're going to be moving around the board, and it gives you more infantry. And the infantry is key. They're only 2-man small units, so I can hide them wherever I want, and they're observed. Then I'll be, like I said, dropping 1 unit of Freelance down to only 1 unit of 5, so they can rod in my opponent's quarter, and I'll be keeping them until turn 3 every game. Or if my opponent messes up turn 2, they'll just drop and do rod straight away. Then I've added 3 units of Locust Heavy Destroyers. Now, they're only 60 points each, but they have an infantry keyword, and they fly move 8 inches. So they give me, I'll be taking them with the Ghost Destructors for the 3d3 damage shots, because they fly around hitting on 3s. They reroll once to hit, and then they're wounding most stuff on 3s or 2s. And if I need to, obviously they reroll once to wound around the Lord. And I can spend a command point for the Necron unit to automatically wound. So I can actually have a play into removing the screening units in the quarters. I can go for the dreadnoughts. I actually have some firepower that I never had in my previous list, and I don't even have them in the list for the firepower. I have them in the list because they can fly around, give me an option to shoot, and they're infantry and they're easy to hide, and they're pretty tough. So they're just better than Ophidian Destroyers, and they're cheaper than Ophidian Destroyers. So taking them allows me to get 3 units of Scarabs. Scarabs are great because they're only 45 points each. They move, I think they move 10 inches. They're very quick, they're very small, you can hide them everywhere, and I can give them invul from the Chronomancer. They're also canoptic constructs, so for CPs they can hardly intervene to help me get the objectives because they're obsec. I can spend CPs for them to explode and on 2+ do mortal wounds. They're great, it's very cheap, and give me loads of options because they're fast. I'll be keeping the same 3 Catans with the same 3 powers because I think that's a very flexible build where I can triple one of the powers that plays into my opponent very well. And if there's no powers that play into my opponent very well, I just keep the same powers and just save myself some CPs for real charges potentially. So that's how I would improve this list. It's basically going heavily into MSU. There's other options. You can take 15 Lich Guard, 5/5/5 that walk around the board, but that's less mobile, a bit more tough. I know that's the variant that Mani prefers, but I think after playing this list, MSU is the key. You can add some Tomb Blades, but they're 90 points, so you're losing a bit of the bodies on the board, and they're bit bigger, harder to hide. So I realize I need really small units to hide and be annoying for my opponent, because if they want to come out and kill them, then the Catans will be able to counter them. So that's huge for me. I need to have more MSU. So that's been my roster review. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm way less fluent than Mani, but that's the best I can explain how my army works. It's not super complex, but it has loads of options and flexibility, and it's super fun. So I encourage you to at least try it, because having 3 Catans feels amazing. And if you like this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell in the corner. And consider joining the Elite, because we've got way more content, tournament reviews, and more videos coming, because we're building a new studio. So there'll be way more content worth subscribing for. So, till the next time, guys. See ya.